Hey y'all, my name is Alexandria, and I want to welcome you all to the Uprooted podcast, where we are uprooting all of the trauma and any negativity that we may have learned or experienced during this lifetime, whether that be within our homes or our communities. And we are challenging these thoughts and beliefs that have manifested from these less than ideal experiences. And we're going to propagate wisdom, healing, growth, and cultivate wellness and balance in our lives, whatever that may look like for you. Just a quick disclaimer, your girl may have a couple degrees, but I am by no means an expert in any of these topics that I address on this platform. This is solely my creative outlet to share my own story and wisdom that I've gained on my own journey. My only intent is to build community and encourage others on their own journey. So feel free to ever correct me if ever need be so that I can continue to grow and evolve. And please always remember, take what you need and leave what does not align with you. I just want to go ahead and give a quick shout out to my cousin, Alyssa Posey. She is the creator of my podcast artwork. You can follow her on Instagram at Hedgy Sloth. That's HEDGYSLOTH. Okay, y'all. So today's topic, we are talking about trusting your journey as a late bloomer. So when we're discussing late bloomers, this is usually a term used to describe the inability of someone to fulfill certain achievements by a certain age or by a certain timeline. I will say in our Western society, it is a standard that you should graduate college, get married, buy a house, and have kids, and be as successful as you are ever going to be, at least by 25 years old, in that exact order, right? I believe that this ideology I just don't think it's realistic for anyone. And it does place a lot of pressure on you to accomplish a lot of work in your early 20s. And I think from my own experience, early 20s are like prime time to be making mistakes and messing up a little bit. More importantly, since we are talking about trauma and how that turns us into late bloomers, it's important to note that when you have faced a significant amount of trauma and adversity in your childhood and in your lifetime, it makes it a lot more difficult to not only accomplish these things in this time frame, but also to define what success looks like for yourself and go after those things during your 20s. And just to be completely honest here, I believe that significant and repetitive trauma in your childhood during your prime developmental ages is already setting you up for failure. First of all, we have to talk about that trauma can cause developmental delays. Not only can it cause, it often does cause developmental delays, and we'll go into that later on in the episode. And the accomplishments that society expects us to fulfill are heavily contingent upon you having caretakers in your life who care about your well-being and your future, and also having a home life with the resources to prepare you to work towards these things later on in your life. When we're talking about, your well-being and your future, obviously everybody's first thought is going to go to your financial success, and that is important, not that it's not important. However, I do believe that each of us should personally define what success looks like for ourselves and in our own lives. And a part of us being able to define what success looks like for ourselves and our lives is often dependent upon our early developmental years and our caretakers being able to recognize our interests, our likes, our talents, all of our gifts that we have naturally just come into the world with, and acknowledging those things and pouring into them mentally, emotionally, and spiritually. So for most of us who grew up with like significant childhood trauma, you probably dealt with emotionally unavailable parents. So they definitely probably did not pour into your gifts and your talents as they should, because usually people who are emotionally unavailable and emotionally immature, they're just self-preoccupied. So if you don't have anybody who can recognize and say like, hey, you're really talented, you're really gifted, and celebrate you for these things, whether that be art or music, or maybe you're really smart, or maybe you're very athletic, those sort of things. It starts at home with your caretakers, like cheering you on and clapping for you. That is what's planting the seeds of like belief in yourself and like, hey, I'm a really good person, or hey, I'm really good at X, Y, and Z. So those things. A real life example that I have witnessed, because I did not have the privilege of having parents to, celebrate me and acknowledge me and pour into me. But a real life example that I was able to witness, I will use my cousin as an example. My cousin is an artist. She's very, very, very talented. I love my girl to death. Shout out to Alyssa. Anyways, she's an artiste, okay? And she has always been an artiste. Like, I remember when we were kids, like, my girl, we would come over there and we would have, like, slumber parties. And she always had a whole theme. And she would, like, decorate and draw and, like, put it all together. I remember she used to, like, pretend she was doing these little Chuck E. Cheese photos. Like, you remember at Chuck E. Cheese, you would take the picture. Like, it would take a picture of you. And then it would show Chuck E. Cheese, like, drawing the picture. So she would come around and like take a picture of you and then go draw your picture. So she has always been very, very artistically talented from a very young age. And from my outside perspective, I do feel like her parents definitely celebrated her for that gift, for that talent. And they definitely poured into it. Like, her art has been her thing, and her parents made sure like, hey, for Christmas, we're going to buy you this nice big art set or whatever. And, they're bragging about her. They're congratulating her. Like, just those little tidbits. So fast forward up to now, she's an adult now. And I mean, she has went to college. She's graduated. I know at least one of her pieces of study was art. I know my girl does art all the time. Like, that's her thing. She's very creative. She actually helped me plan my wedding with her creative eye. She, once again, my girl drew my podcast art. So these things kind of steal from her from a very young age. So she was able to build on that and develop that and like build on that sense of self in a sense, I guess. However, if you're like me or a lot of us who grew up with emotionally unavailable caretakers, you probably did not receive any type of recognition or praise for your talents. And my personal experience in my household, I was definitely the scapegoat. I was not celebrated for any of my success, my likes, interests, gifts, anything. So the way that I learned to cope with that was I slowly started to try to morph myself into somebody I wasn't. I definitely just packed away all the stuff that I really was like passionate about and talented in, simply because I wanted my parents' acceptance and my parents' approval. So by doing this, I didn't really take the time to like build on the talents, the natural talents and gifts that I have, or, morph that into my sense of self. So when I did become an adult and reach the ripe age of 18, and it's like, okay, now you got to go to college and you got to pick your degree and, start being successful. I'm just like looking at myself like, I don't even know who the fuck I am. Like, literally. Now, moving into the next topic. So a lot of us didn't have caretakers who poured into us mentally and emotionally. But I also think it's important to discuss financial aspects of childhood trauma and the inability to, fulfill your full potential in life. Unfortunately, for us here in the US, our society is completely dominated by capitalism. So there is a need for monetary resources to prepare you for success in adulthood. And also, the truth of the reality is, it takes monetary resources to also be a good parent. I'm not going to say that you can't be a good parent when you're poor or when you're lower income or whatever, but I will say, as someone who has been a poor single mother, it does make it a hell of a lot harder to be mentally and emotionally present and supportive when you're literally stressed out about feeding the kids. And that's not an excuse. I'm just saying, being poor and stressing about basic resources, it does cause a lot of discourse in somebody, especially when you're responsible for other people's livelihood as well. So specifically, when we're talking about success in adulthood and preparing children for success in adulthood, I'm talking about things like extracurriculars and clubs and college prep resources, etc., those sort of things. So just as an example, so like the kids who have parents who are able to put them in organized sports from a really young age and continue on with that. Those children who have parents who can afford to place them into stuff like that and keep it up all the way through college. Well, of course, you've been playing soccer or football or whatever it is since you were 6, and now you're going to college on a scholarship for said sport that you've been practicing your whole entire life. Whereas like people who don't have those resources, we don't have that advantage, right? Or moreover, when you are in high school and you are preparing for college, I don't think it's talked about enough how debilitating it is to be someone who is poor, someone who wants to go to college, but you don't really have the finances at home to prepare you for college. Because I think people think about like, oh yeah, I'm just going to pack my bags and go. Like, do y'all know how expensive it is? Like, let's start with just like your senior year of high school, right? So we're talking about college applications. We're talking about college visits. We're talking about finding the money and the scholarships and da-da-da-da-da-da. Like, all of these things require some type of monetary resource, whether that be a car to get you to said college tour, or just having the $50 of disposable income on this day because the scholarship is due today, or the application is due today, to be able to submit these things and get you off to your college start. So just to use myself as a prime example, I went to community college. And I want to say there is nothing wrong with community college. Community college is like a cheaper option. I know a lot of people actually they want to go that route, which is fine. So going to community college and then later on transferring into university, it is cost efficient for a lot of people. So for me, I definitely feel like I missed out on the university experience. I know a lot of people say that like college is a scam. I do agree that college is like ridiculously expensive. It should not be that expensive. Everybody should be able to go and have the university experience and not have to spend like 40, 50K a year on tuition. Like, that's absolutely insane. However, I do believe that the university experience is very important for your transition into adulthood. Like, these are your first steps in being independent and like forming adult relationships and staying on top of your own schedule and those sort of things. So I think going to university is essential for that. A lot of poor kids like me don't have that option. So like going back to, the topic of having the resources to prepare for college, I did not have anybody to help me fill out college applications. First of all, I come from a first generation, college background. So I didn't have anybody in my life who even knew what they were doing. And more importantly, my caretakers did not give a good goddamn to even try to assist me with being successful in those areas. Moreover, I didn't have anybody to pay any applications fees. I didn't have anybody to take me on tours. And beyond that, I didn't have any money to pay for college. I literally struggled to just get my mom to fill out my FAFSA application. I had to beg them just to be present and actually be a parent just to get the FAFSA application filled out so that I could pay my tuition. Tuition was all that I could cover, and not even that, because I also had a scholarship to go to community college. So realistically speaking, when I look back in hindsight, I do regret not having the university experience. But I knew then, and I know now, that was not even an option for me. That was not in my deck of cards, because there's no way I was going to be able to pay for room and board and meal plan and tuition and textbooks, that sort of thing. So it just wasn't for me. Meanwhile, while I was in high school and I was a senior, I'm watching all my peers do all of these things. They're going on all these tours and filling out applications, and they're like, oh, I'm decided between this school and that school. And I was envious. I was very jealous, because I wanted that. I wanted to be oh, my mom and me are going out of town to go visit this college for the weekend. But A, I didn't have a mom who gave a fuck. B, my mom is broke. So either way, whichever path, whichever issue you want to pick, I just wasn't going to make it. So I say all that to say it is vital that your caretakers have the financial resources to nourish your talents and set you up for success, set you up to begin building your success into adulthood. And lastly, moving into the most important piece. It's why we're all here. That is the theme of the podcast. We're talking about trauma. So the most important issue I want to discuss, and your potential delay or your cause to being a late bloomer, quote unquote, is the fact that trauma does play a significant role in your mental, emotional, cognitive, and physical development. Trauma can play a significant role in causing developmental delays, especially when you've had significant and or repetitive traumatic events in your lifetime. So just a few ways that, these developmental delays, quote unquote, can manifest itself is leaving home at an early age. I'm definitely guilty of this. I'd say I officially left home when I was maybe 16 or 17 years old. Sensory processing disorders, memory loss or memory issues, personality disorders, CPTSD, etc., etc. The list can go on and on and on. And I know everybody is probably listening, oh, those are mental health issues. Yeah. And trauma, mental health, and development, girl, this all under the same umbrella. They are related. It applies. That's why I'm talking about it, right? So, I had a friend previously, and she grew up with a narcissistic caretaker, and because of this, she developed and was formally diagnosed with BPD. And I knew this girl from back in high school, so she shared with me her experiences and what she had went through in her home life. And ultimately, her coming into adulthood, it made it very difficult for her to function as a normal adult. And I definitely attempted to provide as much support as I could provide to her as a friend. But ultimately, I do feel I have my own mental health issues, and then she had her mental health issues. it just became very overbearing for me. So ultimately, we ended up just ending the friendship, which is a very sad thing. If you think about in hindsight, I don't have any ill will towards her. Like, I wish her nothing but the best. And honestly, it saddens me that people can grow up and develop these type of things. And then you look in the mirror and you're like, damn, I can't hold any personal relationships with people, because sometimes I feel that way also. I mentioned a little bit ago that I left home at an early age, and that was simply because I did not feel safe at home. What was going on in my house was not okay. It did not make me feel safe. After my parents separated, my mom went through this phase where, like, I don't know what, I mean, she's still going through the phase. Like, she still does the same stuff. I don't know what the lady got going on. Moral of the story is, my mom would date random men and she would just bring them home and have them in our house. She also had a tendency to, like, let them bring, like, their whole group with them. Like, I'm talking like 4 or 5 different strange men into our house, and they had no reason to be there. And I just did not feel safe there. Just to give you a little insight, there was one occasion where, I came home with my friend and we both felt unsafe because there was like 4 or 5 like grown men in the house, and they were looking at us all weird because they're fucking weirdos. They're disgusting. So me and her went into my room, and like we literally went in there and we had like knives and we had like blocked the door and everything. But literally, like, a few hours later, like, my mom done passed out drunk, and these men, like 3 or 4 of them, like, they literally just came into my room. Like, they came into my room trying to talk to me and my 15-year-old friend. Like, we were both 15 at the time. It was not an okay situation. And after that, me and her packed our stuff and we walked back home to her house. So it's stuff like that was going on in my house that made me decide, like, hey, I'm going to leave home early because I'm not safe here. And also, I felt like I already had to be an adult and look out for myself already. So I left home early. But ultimately, that decision pushed me into the hands of other toxic and unsafe people. So either way, I took an L. But it's just the principle that I wasn't safe at home and I wasn't safe out in the world either. And this is how trauma can significantly impact your life and how you develop into a normal functioning adult. I'd also struggle with sensory processing and memory issues. With my memory issues, I can barely remember anything from my childhood other than all the bad traumatic memories. And even now, I struggle to remember stuff day to day. Like, it messes with your brain structure because, like, at this point, like, it's literally a term between, like, me and my husband. Like, we have a safe word because there are times, like, I forget so much. I don't remember conversations. I don't remember basic functions. And we would literally be arguing and I'll be like, no, I didn't say that, or no, that didn't happen. And he literally has to say a safe word to be like, Lexi, like, I'm telling you, it happened. So, I'm also very sensitive to lights and sound. I also think this is due to undiagnosed and untreated ADHD. However, I do think another critical piece to me being so sensitive to sensory is my CPTSD, which I have been officially diagnosed with. So just referring to The Body Keeps the Score, in this book it talks about trauma is stored in your body and it can be reflected in your nervous system with things like being very sensitive to things like light and sound. So one thing, like, I have to put on my noise canceling headphones when my kids are around because kids are going to be kids. They are loud as hell. And it really, really bothers me. And it really, really triggers me. So I have to put on noise canceling headphones so I don't freak out. Or even stuff like if something were to fall and come crashing down, like out of the blue, like, I swear I would get so mad. Like, I would get so mad and so triggered. And those are just examples of, like, how it can manifest. And it's important to know it takes a lot of work to rest and heal and reset your nervous system and unpack mental wounds. So when we're considering like all the things we discussed, like your caretakers not recognizing and celebrating you for your talents and your gifts, not having the economic or financial resources, with a lot of like capital T trauma that literally has altered the way that your brain processes information, how could you expect somebody to develop quote unquote on time? I think we should all give ourselves grace in this area, and I am guilty because I struggle with this a lot and I am still learning. But I think it's important to realize that we all who are surviving from trauma, we all were just trying to simply survive. And ultimately, to literally just be in survival mode. Survival takes a lot of mental, emotional, and physical energy, and it changes and alters the chemistry in your body, like your brain chemistry, your physical chemistry. Like if you have CPTSD, like your body has been releasing adrenaline nonstop for 20 years. That it takes a lot to survive something like that. If your brain and your body has literally been doing that, you are going through some shit. So how can you focus on, oh, let me just go to school and buy a house and da 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 da? Like, girl, I'm trying to make sure I make it to the next day, because at this point I'm talking myself down off the edge. Okay. I think we also need to be very mindful that this timeline that society has us on is literally a social construct, and it may work for some people, and some people actually do achieve what is expected of us. But I will say most people do not, even people who don't have like significant capital T trauma. And, you know, when I look back on my life, I am very grateful for where I am now and how far I have come. Like, I started college in 2015 at 18 years old. I was tailoring my degree with dreams of being a TV or a radio host, and I had absolutely no idea what a podcast was or that this was even a thing. I was in a very toxic, abusive relationship, and I surrounded myself with a lot of people that were not good for me, a lot of people who were actually detrimental to my well-being, simply because I was afraid to be alone. I ended up having my first baby at 22 years old, still in that toxic relationship. I ended up abandoning my dreams and my passions, which ultimately ended up keeping me in that relationship a lot longer than I should have been. But now, when I look back, I can see every misstep that I took and wish that I didn't take them. But ultimately, I cannot live in regret, and neither should you. Ultimately, I was doing the best that I could with the tools I was given. And you all were doing the same. If you can relate, like, take a moment to show yourself grace and tell yourself, like, I did my best with the best that I had right then and there. I was just using the tools that I was given to survive and to get by. Moreover, I'm grateful that I've actually learned from those experiences. So now I have the capacity to actually look back and have the wisdom to say those choices were questionable, but I'm here, right here and right now. So now when I'm sitting here looking, I'm almost 28 years old, I can recognize and congratulate myself on being brilliant and talented. I recognize my strengths and my gifts, and I apply them to my life to be successful. I have my children. I didn't do it the way that society says you should do it, but I will say I'm grateful for my kids in the way that it happened, because I do not think without them I would not have been able to make the decisions that I've made to bring me to this point now. My children were the thing that happened to me that made me take a look at my life in full view, like look at my childhood, look at the relationships I was choosing in my life, look at how I talked to myself and how I treated myself. They made me take a look at all of that around me and say, this is not okay. Because if they see this, they're going to think this okay. And then they're going to grow up and they're going to do the same fucking shit. And they made me decide, like, no, I want better for me because I want better for them. I constantly tell myself, one of my affirmations is, I will take care of myself so that I can take care of my children. And now, here I am, right here, right now. I'm pouring my soul into this podcast because this is something I am genuinely passionate about. It is one of my dreams. I do this for fun. I do this for the people. I do it simply because I like doing it and it makes me feel good. And I'm finishing my bachelor's degree. And I also have a husband that treats me the way I deserve to be treated, treats me the way I've never been treated by a man before in my life. So ultimately, I think everybody should take a step back and look at their life and give yourself grace and celebrate yourself for how far you've come. Because just making it out of what you've been through is enough to celebrate. It's enough of accomplishment. And I think you should be very proud of yourself. And you should also take the time to reflect and see how far you've come and how far you can go. So ultimately, I think the lesson for me here is that when it comes to being a late bloomer, it really doesn't matter how long it takes you. Just make sure you get there. Like, this is your journey. You will get to be where you need to be. In the words of one of my favorite artists, Corinne Bailey Rae, you're gonna find yourself somewhere, somehow. Well, y'all, I just want to thank you guys for listening to me today. Usually I ramble. I think this was a lot more structured. I think I did pretty good this time. But I hope you all tune in again. And may you all be happy, grounded, and aligned with who you are always. Thank you. See y'all later. Peace out.